Hello, I'm Andrew Gautron, Director of Customer Success here at Autocene. For today's video, I'm going to be giving you a general overview of how Autocene Passport functions and how you can start beginning to create some Autocene Passport tasks. So I'm currently on the Autocene Passport configuration page. Every Autocene environment comes with Autocene Passport, which is our integration engine. So it performs as a piece of middleware between one or more systems. It is also our automation engine, or a passive automation engine. And I'll kind of show you how that starts out today here. So you can see on the screen, I have 4 out of 6 tasks. Passport consists of Passport tasks. You can see that I have 4 tasks that are green and 2 tasks that are red. The 4 tasks that are green are currently on. That means they're running, they're doing their things. The 2 that are red, those are off, meaning that they are disabled or they are not running. So Passport as itself consists of these tasks. And these tasks consist of Passport adapters or Passport building blocks to function. So for today's demonstration, I'm going to go through each component here of kind of what makes a Passport task up and how we can start joining these Passport adapters / building blocks together to perform passive automation or a passive integration that you'd like to do within the Autocene Passport system. So I'm going to create a new task. It's going to bring up a new task for me. I'm just going to turn that off for now. And what we can do is we can name our tasks. So maybe we want to generate a list of emails to go out every week. So let's say that we're going to do customer email wave. And we'd call it maybe a customer email wave number 1. This is where you're naming your task. You can begin to set your default integrations or not integrations, but default configurations for your Passport tasks, such as encrypting the inputs and encrypting outputs from this task and kind of what domain it may belong to. So we've named it. So let's start putting in some components to this task here. So Passport tasks consist of 4 different elements. So you can see those 4 different colored building blocks there. We have events, we have inputs, we have actions, and we have outputs. And in the demo environment here, I have a mix of these different components here. So for a customer email wave, there might be a certain event that we'd want to do. But commonly events are something that's going to start the Passport task to do something. So these can be things like a file directory watcher. So maybe you have a directory on a certain server that picks up files. Well, Passport can watch that and pick up those files. We can also have things like a database event. So in the demo environment here, I have the Microsoft SQL event notification, but we have adapters for things like Oracle and other database schemas. You can think of like MongoDB and all that kind of fun stuff. We have scheduled events, and we're probably going to use a scheduled event for this task. Scheduled events are kind of like your Windows scheduled task manager. So this is where you'd begin to configure what days it's happening, what times, how many times a day, exact times, recurrence days, stuff like that. Other types of events that you can begin to utilize are kind of FTP pickups. You can utilize webhooks or some sort of kind of output from an active API. It can be an IoT packet that's coming from a device, or it could be the IoT server itself, or it could be some sort of data intersection that you might have. So for today, we'd probably want a scheduled event to happen to send out a wave of customer emails. So let's say that we want to have this weekly. You can see that I have a couple of different options here. We could say monthly as well would be a good pick, but maybe we want this to happen once a week. And we want to flag that across the week here. So we might want to start it on Sunday. Of course, you're kind of picking the range on the week here that it could possibly go out. And then, of course, you can set what time you want that to go out. So we may want 12 a.m. So this is the event that's going to happen once a week. Possible recurrence days Sunday through Saturday at 12 a.m. So that's our event. Well, we're going to go to the next component here, which is our input. Inputs can be things like it could be a file message input, which is pretty common. So that could be like a structured file like JSON or XML, YAML, tab delimited files, flat files, things of that kind of nature. But for today, we're actually going to say we're not having an input, even though there could be a bunch of different types of inputs that could go into the task, an input of data. But we're going to say we don't want an input of data. And why we would do that is because we may want to pick up the data with an action. So an action is to perform something against the data or to pick up data itself later on. And in this case, I'm going to pick up a SQL action because our lists of emails could be stored in an SQL database. So we could have a list of emails of customers or prospects that we want to send out to. Of course, every task has its configuration. They're autonomous by themselves, and what that means is that by themselves, they're very simple in nature, but you can configure them for a wide range of different use cases. So the SQL action could be something as simple as select all from customer table, right? And you, of course, could utilize like integrated Windows, integrated security. You can name your server, the database in which it's located, so on and so forth. This will pick up the information from SQL. I have customers who utilize stored procedures, view sets, a wide variety of different kind of SQL objects to get kinds of information that they'd like to utilize in a task. So we talk to a database. We pick up that customer list. Well, what can we do with that list? Well, you may want to transform the list. So everything in Passport is XML. So once the data enters the task, it becomes XML. You may want to transform that information. So you may have a template that you want to utilize. Well, the second thing that you may want to do after you've altered that information is do an email action. So we'll put that at the bottom here. And then you can begin to configure the email action based on that. So this is our simple email action. You can have like the user, the mail, the password, and sending out certain email aspects. If you wanted a more complex email action, you'd do something maybe like this, where you can have a specific relay host. You can have attachment options. So you could pull the attachment maybe out of a directory folder or SQL. You can define the content, kind of like what the subject is or what the email body looks like or the recipients, so on and so forth. So there's wide varieties of how these kind of components are configured. But the base idea is that what we're doing is we're pulling in the list, we're transforming that list of customers, and then we're emailing those customers. And then the last building block here is an output. So our output is actually the email itself. So we don't need a physical output. However, with a Passport task, you could have an output such as a file or some sort of action to an API that may engage something else. This could be commonly maybe another Passport task. So another Passport task could say, pick up the event or the output of a previous task and then do something with that information and continue on. So you can begin to create via building blocks some sort of automation to either pull data, manipulate data, or do something with data like emailing, and then send that object to a different task. So we could essentially craft a customer list and maybe send it to a different Passport task to create PDFs or create invoices for a certain customer set. So there's a lot of different options that are essentially made out of all the simplified building blocks that you can configure in Autocene Passport. Of course, there's a huge library of these components. This demo environment doesn't have all the components that are possible within Autocene, but it gives you an idea of how we can begin to utilize these actions and inputs and events to craft something that you're looking to automate passively in the background. I hope this has been a good insight. We're just scratching the surface on Autocene Passport, but it gives you an outlook on kind of how the framework begins to structure automation between two systems, or automating a task like a wave of emails. I want to thank you today for joining me for this video, and I hope to see you for the next.